My name is Tiffany Reynolds, and I was 29 when I learned that love can humiliate you in public even when you thought it would save you. I used to believe that if you planned hard enough, if you loved carefully enough, everything would fall into place. I was wrong. That night, the ring box in my coat pocket felt heavier than my entire body. I'd been carrying it around for a week, waiting for the perfect moment. Tonight was supposed to be at our 5th anniversary. Ethan Walker and I had met in this very restaurant 5 years ago. Back then, he'd smiled like I was the best thing that had ever happened to him. I wanted to believe that spark could return tonight. The waiter guided me to our table, the same corner one where we'd sat during our first date. Ethan was already there, scrolling through his phone, barely glancing up. "Hey," I said softly, sliding into the seat across from him. "You look beautiful," he murmured, eyes still on the glowing screen. "Thanks." I smiled, though my chest already felt tight. "Sorry, just finishing something for work." Work, real estate, late showings, endless phone calls. Lately, that's all he ever talked about. The waiter came. We ordered. Ethan left his phone face down on the table, but close enough that I could see it light up every few minutes. My stomach knotted tighter with each vibration. I tried to start a conversation. "Do you remember our first date here?" He looked around like he was inspecting property. "It's smaller than I remember," he said, then took a sip of his drink. "But still the best pasta in the city," I added, trying to sound light. "Sure," he replied. The silence after that was deafening. My pulse thundered in my ears. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I'd planned every detail, the same restaurant, the same table, even the same wine we'd shared the night we met. I'd imagined laughter, maybe even tears of joy. Instead, there was distance. His face was unreadable like a stranger's. When the waiter brought our meals, my hands were trembling. I could feel the ring box burning through the fabric of my jacket. I told myself this was just nerves. Once he saw the ring, once he knew what this night meant, he'd remember. He'd see us again. I stood up, ignoring the shocked look from the woman at the next table. Ethan frowned. "What are you doing?" he asked. My knees bent before my brain could stop me. I pulled the small velvet box from my pocket, heart pounding so loudly I could barely breathe. "Ethan Walker," I said, voice shaking. "These 5 years have been the most meaningful of my life. I love you, and I can't imagine my future without you. Will you marry me?" For a few seconds, the world went perfectly still. Then his face twisted, not in joy, not in surprise, but in something close to irritation. "Is this really the best you could do?" he asked. At first, I thought I'd misheard. "What?" "The ring," he said flatly. "Is this the best you could do?" I blinked, heat rushing to my face. I thought you liked simple things. You said you wanted something classic." He sighed, shaking his head. "I said that when I was 24. I'm 32 now, Tiffany. Things change." A murmur spread through the restaurant. I could feel eyes on me, on us, the woman kneeling in a silk dress, holding a ring like a fool. "Ethan." I whispered, "What's wrong?" "We talked about marriage." "No, you talked about marriage. You talked about houses and future kids and routines. I just listened." I stared up at him, my throat tight. "You said you wanted that life too." I said I wanted a life, he corrected coldly. "You assumed it had to be yours." My hands went numb. "I don't understand." He stood abruptly, grabbing his jacket. "Because there's someone else." The sound of that sentence tore through me. "What?" He exhaled like he was tired of pretending. "Her name's Vanessa. She's one of my clients. She understands me, what I want, what I'm capable of. Vanessa." I repeated the name like glass in my mouth. "You've been seeing her." "For 3 months," he said simply. "While you were busy saving for this ring, I realized I couldn't keep living in your version of love. You're still stuck in the past, Tiffany. Vanessa's about the future." My legs felt weak. "You're breaking up with me here now." He shrugged. "I didn't plan to, but this proposal forced the truth out. You deserve someone who wants your kind of life. It's not me." I could feel everyone's stares burning into my back. The ring box in my hand felt ridiculous now, like a prop from a play that had just ended. I stood up slowly, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Then I guess I deserve the truth at least." He nodded once, eyes cold. "You do." Then he turned and walked out, leaving me standing there alone. I sat back down, the world a blur. The waiter hovered nervously. "Ma'am, are you all right?" I forced a smile that hurt. Just the check, please." He nodded and disappeared. I stared at the untouched food, the flickering candlelight reflecting off the unopened ring box. The couple at the next table whispered softly, pretending not to look. When I finally stepped outside, the night air hit my skin like a slap. The city lights shimmered, mocking me. I walked without direction through blocks I didn't recognize until I ended up at the riverfront, the ring still clutched in my hand. I sat on a bench, open in the box, and stared at the diamond catching the glow of the streetlights. It was beautiful. Everything I thought love was supposed to be. But Ethan hadn't even looked at it long enough to notice. I wanted to cry, to scream, to call Madison, but instead I just laughed. A brittle, hollow sound that scared even me. "Happy anniversary, Tiffany," I muttered to myself. When I got home, the apartment already looked different. His shoes were gone, the toothbrush, half of the closet empty. On the counter, a note in his handwriting. "I'm sorry, Tiff. You'll find someone who wants what you want. I can't keep pretending. Take care." The ring box sat beside it like a cruel joke. I read the note 3 times before I finally set it down. Then I placed the ring back inside its box, closed the lid, and whispered, "I hope she was worth it." That night I didn't sleep. I just sat in the dark, waiting for the sun, wondering how 5 years could vanish in one conversation. And somewhere between midnight and morning, one truth settled deep inside me. I wasn't broken, just misplaced. And I swore I'd never beg to be chosen again. The morning after the proposal, the world felt unnervingly still. No messages, no missed calls, not even a goodbye. Just silence, the kind that makes your chest feel hollow. I sat at the kitchen counter, staring at the note. Ethan had left his handwriting looping neatly over the lined paper. "You deserve someone who shares your dreams. I can't keep pretending." The words had sounded noble at first glance, but the longer I stared, the more they felt like a coward's excuse. Our apartment looked like someone had torn a photograph in half. The closet half empty, the bathroom counter stripped of his cologne and razor, the space beside the bed cold and untouched. The smell of his aftershave still lingered in the air, faint and mocking. I walked to the window and looked out at the early sunlight cutting across the street, realizing how absurdly normal the world still was. The city didn't pause for heartbreak. Cars still moved. People still laughed below. I picked up the ring box from the counter and turned it over in my hands. It was heavier than it should have been, like it carried all my stupid hope inside. By noon, I forced myself to move. I collected the things he'd left behind, old shoes, an empty watch case, a half-read novel, and dropped them into a cardboard box. There was no crying, no anger, just methodical silence, like cleaning a wound before you can feel the pain. When the box was full, I taped it shut and scribbled Ethan across the top in black marker. Then I slid it against the wall. I'd deal with it later. Around 3 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed. Madison, my closest friend, had texted, "Heard what happened. Do you want me to come over?" I stared at the message thumb hovering above the screen. Finally, I replied, "No. I just need some time to think." She sent back a heart emoji. It somehow made me feel worse. That evening, I called the jewelry store. My voice trembled when I spoke. "Hi, I bought a ring from you last month. I need to ask about your return policy." The man on the other end sounded kind. "Of course, ma'am. Within 30 days, we can offer a full refund. May I ask, is there a problem with the ring?" I hesitated. No. The ring was perfect. The person wasn't. He was silent for a second. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Yeah," I whispered. "Me too." The next morning, I drove across town to the jeweler. The sky was overcast, as if it understood my mood. The same clerk who had helped me pick out the ring was there. Tom, a silver-haired man with a kind face. He recognized me immediately. "Ms. Reynolds." "Back so soon." My lips tightened. Not for a good reason. He nodded gently, saying nothing more as I handed him the box. When he opened it, the diamond still sparkled, as if it didn't know it had been rejected. "For what it's worth," he said softly. "It's a beautiful piece. Any man would have been lucky to get it." I smiled without meaning to. Apparently not lucky enough. Tom processed the return silently. I watched the numbers appear on the screen. $8,000, refunded, 6 months of saving refunded in seconds. When I stepped back into the street, the air felt sharper. The cold bit at my fingers, and I welcomed it. Pain at least meant I could still feel something. The days that followed blurred together. Wake up, go to work, come home, repeat. My job as a senior architect had always grounded me, but now it became an anchor. I took every project, stayed late, every night answered emails at 2 a.m. My coworkers thought I was being ambitious. In reality, I was just trying to drown the noise in my head. Madison came by one evening, letting herself in with the spare key I'd given her years ago. She dropped a grocery bag on the counter. I brought dinner. Real food. You can't survive on coffee and cereal forever. I tried to smile. Watch me. She gave me that look, the one that said she wasn't buying it. Tiff, are you okay? I exhaled, my shoulders slumping. Define okay. Eating. Sleeping. Leaving the house for reasons other than work. I'm fine, I said automatically. You're not. Her voice was gentle but firm. She took my hand, squeezing it. He humiliated you, yes. But you're not the fool here. You loved him, and that's never foolish. I looked away, blinking fast. It feels foolish. It feels human. That night, after Madison left, I stood by the window, watching the city lights shimmer against the dark glass. I caught my reflection, tired eyes, hair tied up carelessly, wearing one of Ethan's old sweatshirts I hadn't thrown out yet. I took it off, folded it neatly, and placed it into the donation box by the door. A few days later, my boss, Harold, called me into his office. He was a kind man, mid-50s, the type who always noticed when someone wasn't quite okay. Tiffany, he said, adjusting his glasses. I've been thinking. We're opening a new design branch in Seattle, and we need someone experienced to head the team. You've been one of our strongest project leads. Would you consider taking it Seattle, I repeated. That's across the country. He nodded. I know it's a big move, but I think it could be good for you. A change of scenery, new team, fresh start. He didn't say it outright, but I knew he'd heard about what happened. Madison probably told him. I hesitated for a long moment. Then I nodded. When would you need me? 2 months. Then I'm in. For the first time in weeks, I felt something that wasn't grief. It was relief. That weekend, I packed Ethan's things into the car and drove them to a small storage unit near downtown. The attendant handed me a lock and asked, How long do you need it for? Forever, I said. When the metal door slammed shut, I felt something click inside me. A final door closing on that chapter of my life. That night, I wrote a short text to Ethan. My hands didn't shake this time. Your things are in storage. Unit 217. Access code 4491. No greeting, no emotion. 10 minutes later, his reply came through. Thank you. I'm sorry about how everything happened. I hope we can still be friends. I stared at the message for a long minute. Then I blocked his number. Then I blocked him on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn because apparently pain finds you even in professional spaces. When I finally put the phone down, I exhaled slowly. My heart still hurt, but the edges felt duller. That night, I stood on my balcony, wrapped in a blanket, watching the city below. Somewhere, Ethan was probably having dinner with Vanessa. Maybe she was laughing, maybe she wasn't. It didn't matter. The wind was cold, but it carried something clean with it. A hint of rain, a hint of renewal. I whispered into the night, You don't get to break me twice. Seattle was waiting, and I promised myself that when I got there, I wouldn't be the same woman who'd knelt down and begged for love. I'd be someone who never had to. When I stepped off the plane in Seattle, the air smelled like rain and pine. The sky was gray, heavy, endless, but it didn't feel suffocating. It felt like a clean slate. The relocation team from the firm had arranged an apartment for me, downtown, 12th floor glass walls, quiet view of the harbor. My first night there, I unpacked just one box coffee mug, laptop, a framed photo of my parents, and a small cardboard box labeled Old Life. I shoved that one into the back of the closet and promised myself I wouldn't open it. Seattle moved differently from Chicago. Slower, moodier. Mornings started with fog drifting through the streets, and nights ended with the sound of rain against glass. I'd always been afraid of silence, but here it became something sacred, a soft space where I could finally breathe. Work became my compass. I threw myself into my new role as senior architect like a soldier charging into battle. 12-hour days, back-to-back meetings, blueprints scattered across my kitchen counter. When my team complimented my designs, I smiled politely, but never lingered. Praise didn't touch me the way it used to. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore, not to Ethan, not to anyone. I was just trying to rebuild from the ashes. One afternoon, while sketching a new project proposal, my colleague Samir leaned over my desk. You work like you're trying to outrun something, he said, half-jokingly. I looked up and smiled faintly. Maybe I am. He nodded thoughtfully. Well, you're doing a damn good job of it. When the office emptied, I'd stay behind. the hum of the printer, the ticking clock that was my company. It was better than coming home to an apartment where no one waited. By the third month, I started filling the empty hours differently. Mornings at the gym, weekends hiking along forest trails, photography classes on Thursdays. Through the lens of my new camera, I started noticing beauty in small, forgotten things. Raindrops on a railing, reflections in puddles, strangers smiling under umbrellas. I began to feel present. Not healed, not yet, but here. Madison called every Sunday. "You sound different," she said one morning, sipping coffee on video chat. "How so?" "Less like a ghost, more like a person." I laughed. "That's progress then." "It's more than progress, Tiff. It's living." I didn't tell her how sometimes I still woke up reaching for my phone expecting to see Ethan's name light up the screen. How I still avoided Italian restaurants. Some ghosts take longer to fade. 4 months into my new life, I flew home for Madison's birthday. She threw a small game night at her apartment, close friends, soft music, laughter that felt effortless. That's where I met Adam Blake. Madison introduced us with a grin that told me she'd been planning it. "Adam, this is Tiffany, the architect I told you about." He smiled warmly. "Ah, the woman who built the new West Ridge complex," I nodded. Guilty. He was tall, well-dressed, but relaxed, the kind of man who didn't need to prove anything. A financial analyst, apparently. He had kind eyes, the sort of eyes that noticed everything but didn't judge. We ended up seated across from each other during a board game. Settlers of Catan. I was rusty, and he was merciless. "You left your weed exposed," he teased. "That's amateur behavior." "I was being polite," I shot back. He smirked. "I don't need polite. I need strategy. Do you have sheep?" He laughed. "Maybe. Convince me." That was the first time in months I genuinely laughed the deep, unguarded kind. When the night ended, he offered to walk me to my car. So he said, hands in his pockets, "How's Seattle treating you?" "Still deciding." I said, "The city's beautiful, but it's lonely." He nodded. "Lonely isn't always bad. Sometimes it's just the space between who you were and who you're becoming." The words stuck with me. We started texting after that, short messages at first, then longer ones. He'd send photos of sunsets or ridiculous memes, and I'd reply with coffee recommendations or sarcastic comments. When I returned to Seattle, the messages didn't stop. They just changed time zones. Video calls became routine. Sometimes we'd talk for an hour, sometimes just a few minutes. He'd ask about my projects. I'd ask about his dog Bailey, who kept stealing socks. It felt easy. No pressure, no performance. One Friday evening, he said, "You should come visit. Bailey misses you." I laughed. "Bailey's never met me." "Exactly. She's tired of hearing about you secondhand." 2 weeks later, I booked a flight. Seeing Adam again was strange, like stepping into a memory you didn't realize you'd been rewriting in your head. We met at a small cafe near the airport. He had a coffee waiting for me, just the way I liked it, oat milk, 2 sugars, no questions asked. We spent the weekend exploring the city, talking about everything and nothing. The second night, as we walked along the river, he said quietly, "You look lighter than when I met you." "Seattle rain washed me clean," I said with a half smile. "Or maybe you just stopped carrying what wasn't yours to hold." Something in my chest ached, not in a painful way, more like a door cracking open after being sealed too long. When I flew back to Seattle that Sunday night, I couldn't stop thinking about him, about the calmness in his voice, the ease of being seen without being measured. Our calls became nightly after that, and by the third month, he surprised me with a flight ticket. "Come visit me this time," I said, laughing when he texted the itinerary. He replied, "No more halfway measures. Let's start building something real." 3 months later, Adam visited Seattle, and he never really left. He found a job downtown, rented a place nearby. For the first time in years, my apartment wasn't silent anymore. There were coffee mugs in pairs, laughter echoing down the hallway, playlists shared on lazy Sundays. He didn't ask about Ethan, and I didn't talk about him. There was no need to. Adam wasn't trying to replace anyone. He was building something new with me, brick by brick, moment by moment. One night, we stood on the balcony watching the rain streak down the windows. He wrapped his arms around me and whispered, "You don't have to try so hard to be okay." "I know," I said softly, "but I want to be." "You already are," he murmured. That was the first time I believed it. Seattle still rained every day, but now it didn't sound lonely. It sounded alive. I didn't know it then, but this calm, this peace wouldn't last forever, because the past has a way of finding you even when you've stopped looking for it. And one unexpected phone call would remind me just how fragile healing can be. It's strange how life rebuilds itself in silence. One morning you wake up and realize the ache in your chest has faded, replaced by something steadier. Not joy exactly, but peace. That's what life with Adam Blake felt like. Peaceful. We didn't rush anything, didn't try to script perfection. We just existed together. And somehow that was everything. A year had passed since the move to Seattle. I'd stopped measuring time by heartbreak and started measuring it by moments that mattered. Sunday pancakes, long walks after rain, the sound of Adam humming in the kitchen while making coffee. Our apartment was small but warm. My workspace was filled with sketches and scattered drafts, and Adam's desk sat beside it littered with spreadsheets and half-eaten granola bars. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. One quiet evening, while I sat sketching a project, Adam leaned against the doorway. "You know what I like about you?" he asked. I smiled without looking up. "My incredible design sense," he chuckled. "That too. But mostly you make me feel like I don't have to perform, like I'm enough." I set my pencil down and turned to him. "That's because you are." He crossed the room, kissed my forehead. "Was that what your ex made you feel?" Enough. I hesitated. It wasn't a subject we often touched. "No," I said finally. "Ethan made me feel like love was a test I'd never quite pass, like I had to keep proving my worth." Adam nodded softly. "Then I hope I'm giving you a different lesson." "You are," I whispered. "You really are." A few days later, Madison called. Her voice was bright with gossip, but there was an edge of curiosity. "So, Ethan's ex, that Vanessa woman? Apparently she's gone totally silent online. No photos, no posts, nothing." "Okay," I said, half laughing. "And this matters to me because you used to stalk her Instagram after the breakup. Don't pretend you didn't." I grinned. "Maybe I did once, but I haven't thought about either of them in a long time." "Really?" she teased. Not even a little satisfaction knowing they might have imploded. I paused, then shook my head. "No. I'm done being invested in other people's karma." That peace lasted until the phone rang. It was late, around 9:45 p.m. I was reviewing design drafts on the couch while Adam cooked dinner. When the unknown number flashed across my screen, I almost ignored it, but something intuition maybe made me swipe to answer. Hello, silence at first, then a shaky breath. "Tiffany, please don't hang up." My stomach dropped. "Ethan," his voice cracked. "Yeah, please just give me a minute. I called your office. I just needed to talk to you." For a moment, all I heard was the sound of rain tapping the window. I should have hung up, but curiosity, or maybe closure, kept me on the line. "I'm listening," I said quietly. "I made a mistake," he said. "Vanessa. She wasn't who I thought she was. She lied about everything. Her money, her life, even her job. It all fell apart. She left and I don't even know where to start over. I'm sorry that happened," I said flatly. He hesitated. "That's it. You're just sorry. What else do you want me to say, Ethan? That maybe you still think about us, that you remember what we had." I took a slow breath. I do remember. I remember how it ended and how much it hurt, but I also remember who I became because of it, and I'm not her anymore. Long silence. Then quietly, "You're with someone else, aren't you?" "Yes." "What's his name, Adam? How long?" "About a year." He gave a humorless laugh. "A year. You moved on that fast?" "You moved on in 3 months," I said softly, while we were still together. He said nothing, just breathing. Finally, I added, "I hope you find peace, Ethan. I really do. But we're not going back. Take care of yourself." And I hung up before he could reply. Adam came out of the kitchen, holding 2 plates of pasta. He saw my face and frowned. "Was that him?" I nodded. "Is he okay?" "I don't think so," I said. "But that's not my problem to solve anymore." He set the plates down and pulled me into his arms. "Good, because you're mine now." I smiled against his shoulder. "Lucky you." "Lucky us," he corrected. A week later, Madison called again. "You're not going to believe this," she said breathlessly. "A mutual friend told me Ethan's ex, that Vanessa woman, got exposed. The guy she was flaunting, fake career, fake wealth. The ring she posted online. Fake, too. Cubic zirconia from Amazon." I blinked. "Wow. That's all you're going to say? Wow. Tiffany." This is poetic justice. I sighed. It's sad, but I'm not cheering for anyone's downfall, Mads. She groaned. You're too healthy now. It's annoying. Occupational hazard of moving on, I teased. When we hung up, I sat for a long time watching the rain trail down the window. There was no satisfaction in knowing they'd fallen apart. Just quiet understanding what goes around eventually comes back. Months rolled by, like pages turning. Adam and I traveled together. Portland, Vancouver, small coastal towns that smelled of salt and coffee. He took photos of me laughing under storm clouds, and every time I looked at them later, I saw someone I barely recognized, lighter, freer. One evening, while we watched the sunset from a cliff, he turned to me. You ever think about the past? Sometimes, I admitted, but mostly I think about now, he smiled. Good answer. He didn't know how much weight those words carried. For years now, had been something I couldn't live in, always replaying what was lost, what should have been. But with him, I'd stopped rehearsing the past and started trusting the present. And yet somewhere deep down, I knew the story wasn't finished, because closure doesn't always come with time. Sometimes it walks back into your life when you least expect it. For me, it came the day I walked into a jewelry store to buy a ring of my own. The day I decided to propose to Adam, the sky looked like it had been painted in shades of gray and forgiveness. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled damp, like the world was waiting for something new to begin. 2 years had passed since that humiliating night in the restaurant, and for the first time, I wasn't haunted by it. When I thought about kneeling again, it didn't feel desperate. It felt right. Adam never made grand gestures about love. He just showed up every single day in small, reliable ways. Morning coffee, shared silence, holding my hand during bad news and good. There was no performance, no test, just consistency. That's what I wanted to propose to the kind of love that doesn't need fireworks to last. I walked into the same jewelry store where I'd once returned the ring that broke me. The chime above the door echoed through the quiet space, and for a second the memory hit me like cold wind. Same glass counters, same soft yellow lights, same faint smell of polished wood and velvet boxes. Ms. Reynolds. I looked up. The man behind the counter smiled. Tom, the silver-haired jeweler who'd helped me years ago. He still remembered. Well, he said kindly, I didn't expect to see you again. Neither did I admitted. What brings you back? I need an engagement ring, I said, smiling. For someone who makes life make sense again. His face lit up. Wonderful. Congratulations. We spent the next hour looking through settings and stones. I knew what I wanted. Simple, elegant, delicate. Something that reflected strength without shouting it. When I finally found it, an oval-cut diamond on a slender gold band, Tom nodded approvingly. Excellent choice. What's her name? He asked automatically. Then quickly corrected himself. Sorry, his name. Adam, I said softly. He's patient, kind, the sort of man who doesn't need to be dazzled to feel love. Sounds like a lucky man, Tom said warmly. I smiled. No, I'm the lucky one. As Tom went to print the paperwork, the bell above the door chimed again. I didn't turn around at first, until I heard a voice I hadn't heard in 2 years. Hi, I need someone to look at this. The sound of her tone, low, uncertain cracking in the middle, made the hair on my neck stand up. Vanessa. I froze the air, leaving my lungs in one sharp exhale. She walked toward the counter beside mine, clutching a small velvet ring box in both hands, like it was something poisonous. Tom's assistant greeted her politely. Of course, ma'am. What can we help you with? I was told this was real, she said softly, but I need to know for sure. The assistant opened the box and pulled out a glittering ring. He looked at it under a jeweler's loupe, then frowned. Ma'am, he said gently, this isn't a diamond. It's cubic zirconia. Vanessa blinked. That can't be right. He said, I'm sorry, but it's worth about $50 retail. Her face crumbled. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling before she could hide them. I stood frozen, the memory of Ethan's betrayal and her name echoing in my mind like thunder. Vanessa, one of my clients. We've been together for 3 months. Now here she was. Different. Thinner. Her makeup smudged, her clothes rumpled. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. Ma'am, the assistant asked softly, unsure what to do. She shook her head, pressing a trembling hand to her mouth. It's just, everything he told me was a lie. Tom called out, unaware of the tension. Ms. Reynolds, your ring is ready. Beautiful choice. Your fiancé is very lucky. Vanessa's head snapped up. She turned slowly, and when our eyes met, her breath caught. Tiffany, she whispered. I straightened, forcing calm into my voice. Hello, Vanessa. Her face went pale. You're buying an engagement ring. I am. For him. She said it like she already knew the answer. Yes, I said simply. For the man who never made me feel small. Her lips trembled. Can we talk, please, just for a minute? Part of me wanted to walk out right then to leave her to her ghosts. But another part, the one that still remembered what it felt like to be humiliated, stayed still. All right, I said. 1 minute. She took a shaky breath. I don't know where to start. Trevor, that's the man I left Ethan for. He lied about everything. The money, the career, the house, all fake. I lost everything, Tiffany. My job, my friends, even my family stopped answering my calls. I thought I'd built something better, but it was all glass. And when it shattered, there was nothing left. Her voice cracked. I destroyed something real for something that never existed. I looked at her for a long time. She wasn't the woman from Ethan's photos, polished, confident, untouchable. She was human now, fragile, and for the first time I didn't feel anger, just quiet pity. I'm sorry that happened to you, I said. She flinched. You're sorry I am, because I know what it feels like to lose something you thought was forever. She shook her head. No, you don't. You have him now. You got the happy ending. I sighed. This isn't about endings, Vanessa. It's about choices. You made one and so did I. She stared at me, eyes glistening. Do you ever think about him, Ethan? Sometimes, I said honestly, but not in the way you think. I don't miss him. I just remember him as a lesson, a reminder of what I won't settle for again. She bit her lip. He told me once you proposed to him, that you knelt in front of everyone. I did, I said calmly. And he said it was the best thing that ever happened to his ego. Her eyes widened, tears spilling freely. I'm so sorry. For everything. I nodded. I forgave you a long time ago, Vanessa. But forgiveness doesn't mean I want to go back to the same story. Tom returned just then, placing a small velvet box in front of me. All set, Ms. Reynolds. I picked it up, feeling its weight light, steady, full of promise. Thank you, I said to him. Then to Vanessa softly. Take care of yourself. Maybe start by forgiving the woman in the mirror. I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me I heard her crying quietly, the sound raw and real. Outside, the rain had started again, soft and rhythmic, like applause from the universe. I looked up at the gray sky and smiled. This time the ring in my hand didn't feel like regret. It felt like closure. The next evening, Seattle glowed under a silver mist. The air smelled like wet leaves and rain-soaked pavement. I remember thinking, this is what calm feels like. Not the absence of chaos, but the presence of peace. I had spent all day planning something simple, personal. No fancy restaurant, no audience, just the two of us, the way love should begin again quietly without witnesses. The park where Adam and I had our first kiss sat just a few blocks from our apartment. There was a small wooden bench under an oak tree, the same spot where he'd once told me, lonely isn't always bad. Sometimes it's just the space between who you were and who you're becoming. Tonight that space had finally closed. He was already there when I arrived, standing by the bench, hands in his jacket pockets. His smile was the kind that always made my heart settle. You're late, he teased. Architects are never late, I said, brushing raindrops from my hair. We're just dramatic with timing. He laughed, pulling me into a hug. You okay? You've been quiet since this morning, I nodded, breathing in his scent coffee cedar home. I'm more than okay. He tilted his head. You sure? Yeah, I said softly, stepping back. There's something I want to ask you. His brow furrowed, confused but curious. I took a slow breath, then dropped to one knee. For a moment, time stilled. Only the soft patter of rain, only the sound of my heartbeat echoing in my ears. Adam Blake. I began, voice trembling. But sure, you're the first person who ever made me feel like exactly enough was more than enough. You never asked me to be smaller or quieter or simpler. You just let me be me and loved me for it. His eyes widened, breath-catching, as I pulled the small velvet box from my coat. So I'm asking you now, will you marry me? He blinked, stunned. Then slowly a smile spread across his face, warm and disbelieving. You're serious. Completely. He crouched down to my level, rain glinting in his hair. Yes, he said, voice cracking with emotion. God, yes. When I slid the ring onto his finger, it fit perfectly, as if it had always belonged there. We both laughed and cried, rain mingling with our tears, until I couldn't tell the difference. He cupped my face. You have no idea how much I love you. I think I do, I whispered, because I feel it every day. We stayed there like that for a long while, the city lights shimmering around us, the world perfectly quiet except for the sound of our breathing. Later that night, we sat on the bench, his arm around me, watching the street lamps flicker through the drizzle. I've been thinking, he said softly. Would you ever want to go back to Chicago visit? I smiled faintly. Maybe one day. But not to relive anything, just to prove to myself that I survived it. He kissed my temple. You did more than survive, Tiffany. You rebuilt. His words lingered. They reminded me of something I'd written in my journal months ago, but never said aloud. Healing doesn't mean you stop hurting. It means you finally stop wishing the past was different. That night, I realized I had stopped wishing. A week later, a small envelope arrived in the mail from Tom the jeweler. I assumed it was a receipt or thank you note, but when I opened it, I found a short, handwritten message. Ms. Reynolds, I thought you should know. The woman who was here the other day came back to sell her ring. It was unfortunately worthless. She left without saying much. I hope she finds peace, and I hope your story ends differently. Warm regards, Tom. I set the letter down, exhaling slowly. My chest ached not with pain, but with something like compassion. For a long time, I'd imagined closure as confrontation, a final word, a satisfying ending. But real closure, I learned, was quiet. It looked like forgiveness. It sounded like silence. I whispered into the still air, I hope you find peace too, Vanessa, and you, Ethan. And I meant it. That weekend, Adam and I celebrated with takeout and laughter. No champagne, no speeches, just warmth and truth. At one point, he looked at me across the couch, a soft smile in his eyes. You ever think about what led you here all the time, I said. It's strange. For years I thought I'd been rejected, but now I see it differently. How so? They didn't reject me, I said quietly. They released me, so I could find this a love that fits without shrinking. He reached over, took my hand, and kissed it. You're the best decision I never saw coming. I smiled. And you're the answer I stopped looking for. People sometimes ask me if I regret that night in the restaurant, the one where I knelt for the wrong man and walked away shattered. I don't. Because that night broke me open just enough to make space for the life I have now. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Love doesn't always arrive wrapped in applause. Sometimes it shows up, quietly sits beside you in the dark, and stays until the light returns. And when it does, you'll know, not because it dazzles you, but because it finally feels like home.